Hi, it's me, Replica 419 reporting. Today I'm going to do a sort of review and recommendation. Well, maybe not as much a review and more so a recommendation. So going forward for some of these videos that kind of highlight one game, I plan on using this sort of recommendation conversational format. And I'm just going to talk about games that I like. I'm not going to be reviewing games that I don't like. And when I talk about games that I like, I'm going to talk about the reasons that I like them. So if you'd like to see a recommendation for Risk of Rain 2, that's what you'll be seeing here. You're launched from space in a small pod and land in a somewhat, at least initially appearing, barren field. You come out, maybe you have a partner, and you look around. What place is this? Where are you? You start to explore. There's something mysterious, something ancient about where you are, but you can't quite place it. And then you start to see structures of what once was. And as you explore what at first seemed somewhat lifeless, a creature from around a corner begins to prod at you. You're not welcome here. And as you explore, you find things to help you along the way. But all the while, the horde grows around you. Risk of Rain 2 serves as a sort of mashup of genres. It's a melding of a horde mode shooter experience and a roguelike. You are invited into this world that at first seems lifeless, but soon it is violent towards you. But it has kind of this grooving, melodic vibe to it, right? It feels serene in its aggression. One of the things that really separates Risk of Rain is the atmosphere and environment that's presented to you. There's almost a haze of music and sound and color that makes you feel so much so that you're in this alien place. But at the same time, it makes you want to find little nooks and crannies and discover things. It plays on your sense of curiosity. It's not so much about beating the next creature. It's about what you'll find once you do. So I think it's important at this point to maybe break down the actual gameplay loop. You're a certain class character, have sort of a row of cooldown abilities. Most characters have some sort of movement ability, whether it's like a blink or a roll or like a grapple hook. And then maybe some sort of crowd control ability and some variants on attacks. But it's all very simple to get your head around. And anyways, so you spawn and there's different enemy types that are at first weak and then deal more damage and have more health. And at some point the games do feel like kind of bullet spongy and bullet helly and hordy, but that's not always the case, because a lot of what makes the story that you're playing occur are items that you find. So you're constantly kind of earning two types of points. You're earning experience points that will level up your character so that it progresses with the world around you, and you're also earning income that you can use to open chests and buy things in stores around these different environments. And that really changes the way the game's played, much like a Binding of Isaac or another roguelike-like experience. I think the thing that makes this different than a Binding of Isaac type game is that it's so intrinsically like a cooperative shooter experience. So it's like which class will benefit more from this item, and then you can kind of build it like an RPG, right? Like you can have like a tank player that's getting more health abilities, that's going to be like a close range bruiser, and then you can have these range damage dealers getting all this DPS. So you can play it like that very strategically if you want. So you've selected your character, you've collected a few of your initial items, you've defeated some enemies, but what you're looking for on each world, essentially on each stage, is the way to get to the next stage. So once you activate this endpoint of the stage that you're on, you have to fight a boss. And initially the bosses are pretty easy and relatively spongy, but that's something else that's grows with the game, just the same way the characters you can play grow and the environments grow, and even the little enemies change. The big enemies, you'll unlock new ones with different patterns and different ways of moving and different levels of difficulty, and that just adds to this story. So then once you defeat the boss, you can then progress to this kind of step 2 of the same experience. And then speaking of strategy, the game difficulty doesn't tick up necessarily with your level, it ticks up with time. So if you're slower and more methodical about your builds and finding items and looting, you might not benefit as much as if you go through quickly, and you kind of have to balance that in the story that you tell. But that's kind of like another beautiful aspect of this game, is that each time you play, each sitting is a different new experience. You start with a small experience, so you start as a particular character, a kind of jack-of-all-trades character, and you see only a small slice of the world. And as you play, you unlock more things about the world. And it's not just the act of playing it that gets you these things, right? It's not just the time sunk. It's that you have to discover these things and you have to find them. And there's certain ways that you unlock these certain different characters. And there's certain places that you can find outside of just these regular environments that will allow you to unlock a more different experience. At first, you're in a place that seems sort of Earth-like and green, and then you discover places that are further alien. and I don't want to give too much of it away, but by the time this 1.0 update comes out, there'll be 10 different stages. But you don't just go through the stages in a kind of set order. Well, you do. There's kind of options the game picks for you. There's kind of like a story tree that it follows. But each time you play the game, you'll follow through that story in a different way. And you'll find different places that have different kind of subsections that you can access. And that kind of variety is another great thing about Risk of Rain 2. So I've realized as I'm recording this video that I've said the word story a lot, which is kind of funny in the sense that this is not a narrative game at all. When I say story, what I'm referring to is the gameplay and how you're kind of encouraged to make it your own. So much like any sort of horde mode shooter, maybe your goal is just to have an unending run. Like maybe you just want to keep going and going and going, and if that's the goal that you want to have, that can be your goal. But maybe it's to find something you haven't found before, or maybe it's to unlock a character that you haven't played as, or find a new boss to fight. And that's kind of the cool thing about this game. It reminds me of Mario 64 in a way that you go into the world and there's a different star for you to find. So you can, if you'd like, play Risk of Rain that way, right? You can choose your star going in and be like, this is my goal. You get to craft the story that you're going to tell because you get to choose the stakes and the goals as you play the game. So if you're looking for a game to play, I recommend Risk of Rain 2. It's coming out of early access on Steam today, so I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it. And they're releasing with this final, well, this 1.0, I don't know that it's final, this 1.0 update, another environment to play in, a final environment, and a final boss. Something that Risk of Rain 2 has lacked up to this point. But it's still a game that I've played for many hours, even without that. So you're probably wondering at this point, if you haven't played the first Risk of Rain, obviously this is Risk of Rain 2, you're wondering about that relationship, or maybe you've played the first one and you're also wondering about that relationship. So first of all, if you haven't played Risk of Rain 1 and you're not interested, Risk of Rain 2 is a great experience. I still highly recommend Risk of Rain 1. But if you love Risk of Rain 1 and are hesitant to play Risk of Rain 2 because of the structural shift from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, and from a pixel aesthetic to 3D animated aesthetic, I just want to say that these are very closely related games and feel so similar. It's incredible how similar they feel. And it's actually one of my favorite things about Risk of Rain 2, is that I love the aesthetic and the music and the feeling of playing Risk of Rain 1. And somehow Risk of Rain 2, in this kind of different world, still feels so much like Risk of Rain 1. So Risk of Rain 2, even without a boss level and a final boss, I've sunk over 40 hours into, and I definitely just don't even play the game enough for how much I enjoy it. And it's only $20, so I highly recommend it, even as it sits now, even before I've played the 1.0 content. It is well worth it without even having an end game, for all these different sort of end games that you can choose for yourself, and all the different ways that you can play through these levels with these different characters. When you think about the number of experiences you can have with 10 different stages and 10 different characters and hundreds of different items to pick up, you can really see how varied and replayable this is. So if you're curious, and if you enjoy having a feeling of curiosity and adventure and exploration, and being immersed in an atmosphere and a place, then this is certainly the game for you. I highly recommend Risk of Rain 2. Subscribe, like, comment. This is Replica 419 signing out.